to the wisdom flow. Revenue ramp, let's go, let's go. Let's go, let's go.
Today we have a very special guest, Gorish. He is co-founder and CEO at Sybill, and he has been very vocal about AI in sales tech space and has been building a wonderful company. I am a personal user of Sybill, by the way. Gorish, I use it on a daily basis and really like these summaries that Sybill gives me. Everyone in my sales team and customer success team is actually using Sybill, by the way. So today basically we'll talk about Gorish's journey, what was the idea and how you came to deciding that you want to build Sybill, your journey overall, right? But Gorish, before we jump into that, would love to, if it would be great if you can like explain about yourself, a bit about your background as well.
Thank you so much for having me, Ashutosh, and also great to have you as a customer. Your feedback and insights always keep the product team busy. My background is I started Sybill 4 years ago with three of my other co-founders. Prior to that, I used to be a lecturer at Stanford in the field of optimization theory, and I was teaching machine learning and linear algebra and linear dynamical systems. And that's where the idea with Sybill started. Personally, have been in the AI ML domain for about 10 years before Sybill. Have 5 patents in the area as part of a health tech idea that I was working on. So I've been seeing the growth of the AI space, and now with LLMs and transformers coming up, it is very, very exciting to be building in this space.
Yep, I think being a professor to being a founder, it's a very two nuanced things, man. I think professor are majorly like, I think you'll be very, very theoretically, like you're doing a lot of theory. Here you are also doing experiments, right? So by yourself, I think you are executing. So I think, yeah, that's great. So like in your initial journey, right, Gorish, like how was it when you were actually learning about AI, right? And thinking about AI, and how was your journey today? How did you start Sybill and thought that, okay, entrepreneurship is something that you want to pick, right? And like how it has helped you and from that angle.
Yeah, when I started with AI, I think classical ML and linear regression were still the terms that AI was used for. Data analytics, or typically called data science. So it was a very different era back then. I think now, obviously, things have transformed drastically in a very short period of time. My journey from my lecturing days to Sybill actually happened because of COVID. So I used to teach in person, and then because of COVID, my classes shifted online. And that was a very big change for me because my students are now like on top right of the screen and I can't see anyone. I have like this trouble understanding what they are thinking. So what we decided was, if there's an AI that could sit on the call with my students and keep on giving me continuous feedback on how they are reacting, what their nonverbals are they nodding, are they smiling? And so that was the earliest sort of idea with Sybill. And we thought we tried to find ways in academia to solve that problem, but could not. Sales was actually one of the domains where we could get labeled data for the problem. So that's how we got into sales in October of 2020 when we first started out Sybill. Now, 4 years out, it's been a different ball game. Now we are able to do so much more. We can basically building the entire, helping the reps manage their entire deal execution pipeline from your discovery point to your close point. So it's in our suite where we think of it as the dream seller, dream assistant for the sellers, but it does everything around the salesperson that you can imagine. And we are building in more functionality around that.
Absolutely. So, when you started, how did it happen? Like, Gorish, as in you were having few friends. How did you met your co-founder? How did you decide, okay, this is the time that I want to start? Because it is a big leap, right? From being a professor at Stanford, it's a big thing, right? And then jumping into entrepreneurship, taking a dig at it, where you know that things will be gloomy, you'll not be able to earn some money, right? Some days will be very hard. So like, was it something that you, while you were working as a professor or earlier before that as well, in your college days or sort, you were thinking about entrepreneurship, or it was a sudden accident or serendipity that happened?
Yeah. This specific idea was more serendipitous. I personally have been trying to do startups since a while, even before then. So, you know, worked on a few ideas before it as well, and even during my lecturing days. So I was in the physical retail space again. And that was disrupted because COVID came, and this started because COVID came at different points. So I've been like, I love working on things that enable creating impact and especially enable creating very generational impact in my mind. So that's the kind of ideas I gravitate towards, and startups are the perfect way to be able to achieve that. In terms of how I met my co-founder, so I have three co-founders, Nishit, Shomarko, and Mehek. Nishit, I met where I was traveling to the US for the first time from India. And so both of us were at IGI airport in Delhi.
Okay.
So both of us were traveling to TechCrunch Disrupt, and we were both going to grad school. So it was a month before grad school, and we met at the airport. We bonded during the flight and in the TechCrunch drive from Palo Alto to SS and back for 4 days. That's how we started our journey together. So I tried a bunch of these ideas with Nishit as well. Mehek is my sister. So she was at Harvard in her COVID days. So she came into SF. She was like, I'm getting bored. There is no way to get out. And got sucked into the company building. And Shumarko was connected to me by a mutual friend. This is when he was working at Salesforce. And then a year later, again, COVID happened. He shifted to the Bay Area. He moved to our house. He was like, I'm going to leave in 2 months. But it's been 4 years. He's still there. The other three have moved out, but that guy is still there. Uh,
Man, this is amazing. So, and like, how has it been? Because these are all your friends, right? There are hard times and tough times. So like, how do you majorly manage those things, and who manages what, right? What's your personal thing that you have picked up in the team?
it's been a very fun journey. And by fun, I mean lots of ups and downs, but always something to learn, something to grow into. So that has been the best part about it. Working with friends and people, and for me, in my case, also family. The beautiful part is trust is not an issue. Everyone understands that the other person is doing something with the right intention. And within startups, when things are so high stake, that is very critical. So everything else can be taken care of, but that trust can make or break, especially some critical turning points. It can make or break companies. And so for us, that has been the best thing so far, like working with people that I know. And also when we have hired people, we have tried to think about people that are in our network that trust us, that and we trust them to bring in foremost into the company. So those have been the best sort of team members that you can imagine. There are pros and cons. There is no division between work and life. So my social circle is my co-founders in many ways and my sister.
That happens to everyone.
So that is probably a con, but yeah. And I skipped out on the second. I think there was another question.
So basically, it was more sort of like how this has changed you personally overall. Like, what has been the changes that you have seen, and what do you handle at Sybill, right?
Yeah, huge. There is no other word for it. I used to be an introvert, believe it or not, the typical nerd in school. Uh,
Yeah.
like with Sybill, last 4 years have been like absolutely like amazing and different, both emotionally, mentally, or me even physically. But that's a separate story. So yeah, it's been great working with salespeople. Sales is pervasive in every single part of our lives, right? Every time, basically, what we are doing is sales, and this is like happens from when you are young, a teenager, probably till when you are 75 or 80 years old. All you're doing is sales throughout your life in different phases. So working with salespeople, helping understand how they think, helping understand how they build relationships, how they get to people that they don't know a month before, and now they are like best buddies, and building that trust and sort of relation is amazing to someone like me who used to be a developer and a software engineer for a living. Like over the last 4 years, I've probably have spoken to 1,000+ sellers and sales leaders, and it's been a very illuminating journey. Okay. In terms of what I handle today, I'm doing a lot of like position growth within the company. Definitely investing when the time comes, but that's not so frequent anymore. But more time spent on acquisition and growth cycles.
And as you say, Gorish, right? As you said, majorly now you were a developer, right? You were a technology guy who pivoted to a sales role of sort, right? And an entrepreneur. It's a totally different thought process, mind setup that you need, right? So, how did you basically made up your mind that you as a person want to do sales? Because sales is not easy, as we know, right? We work in that category, so we have seen sellers and we have been surrounded by them. And sales is a little intimidating as well, right? Uh, it has its pros and cons. A lot of rejections, a lot of things that you need to handle, you need to answer, you need to basically do a lot of things. So like how it has been treating you overall.
Yeah. Believe it or not, one of the inherent reasons why Sybill is a PLG company is because we were not comfortable with sales when we started out. So that made it easier for us to start a product-led company, and that's a very technical approach instead. I think one big change with when you are a developer or coming from a technical background to doing more sales is you start thinking about problems instead of solutions. And that has been a big change even when we think of how we position Sybill. When we used to talk about our earliest product, the emotional intelligence use case, we would say it's an AI that can read minds on Zoom call. So it's an AI that can read minds, not it helps you read minds, or reading minds on Zoom call is hard. It's a solution that we talk about. Today, we never do that. Today, it's always about the problem that a rep faces. What are the challenges in their day-to-day? They're not able to close enough quota. Their win rates are low. Their amount of manual work is much, much lower. And I think that shift has been the biggest one when we think about like what has changed from, let's say, my technical background to now selling into sales.
No, I think this is a fair point, and I remember yesterday only, or actually today only, right? Me and my co-founder Neeraj were actually discussing about uh, how you want to position this. And one thing that Neeraj said, and after you were telling this statement, it actually resonated was that what is the actual problem statement we might be solving, right? In order to build so he takes care of product, right? So he wanted some clarity on that piece, right? Okay.
Yeah.
If there would be a product that is going to be built, what is the framework that we are actually looking at? Because I can't be building something that is not going to be used, right? So I think your point is very fair. From being solution driven, it should be like uh, problem driven, and that is, I think, majorly from coming from the thought process of if you have been a product manager or a technology guy, it is easier because you have been tackling a lot of problems per se, right? Right. So even when you started, right, Sybill was an AI assistant, or was it like a different tool overall that pivoted into an AI assistant journey? So how did that happen?
Yeah, it was more of a single-bodied function where it was an AI that could read non-verbal cues and body language. So it was much more about how do I look at your, like in this conversation, or if I'm sharing a screen, how do I understand what the people are feeling on the call and connect that to the transcript. Today's product as an assistant, because assistant is an overly used term in every single stretch. But today, when we think of assistant, it's much more of an action agent. So it's not simply generating insights. It's helping me take actions on those insights or different kinds of insights. as a seller, what Sybill does is today akin to, imagine every seller had an EA of their own and that was sitting on the side. Like US CEO might have someone like a chief of staff sitting on your side to help you do the actions after every single call. That's what Sybill is building for the sellers today. So it's much more deeply ingrained into the sales reps workflow. And I can give a few examples here. Like obviously joining the call, Sybill does generate notes, generates summaries, creates follow-up emails, updates the CRM. What we are building is ability to take any follow-up and actually complete the steps before that follow-up. And if a reply comes to that follow-up, I can also complete and answer that reply. So for example, if I send a follow-up to the customer after the call and the customer comes back with, hey, I need a discount, I need the legal to delete this delete this clause in the contract, I need to know when this feature is in the product roadmap. Now, those are three separate actions for your manager, for your legal team, for your product team. And Sybill, what it will do is it will draft the replies for those three people, asking them the questions. Once they reply back, it will take those replies in and again generate a follow-up email for the customers that will have, okay, whether we can give the discount, whether we can remove this clause, whether the list of the product mode or link to the product roadmap. So
Makes sense.
and it completes that cycle until the point to the next call. So reps, they can be focused on not gathering information from online or internally or searching something or creating a deck. Sybill does all of that. Reps can focus simply on taking calls with the customer and closing that deal. It's truly that deal execution powerhouse that will help streamline a lot of the tasks that a rep is doing today independently one by one.
Makes sense. A lot of time will be saved for the folks, right? I think there are a lot of redundant tasks that happens, and I have also had a chance to like talk to a lot of AEs, right? So majorly, I think they don't want to spend a lot of time in these redundant tasks. They want to focus on building human relationships, right?
It's a
I think they
painful,
are best.
yeah, it's a very
They're best
painful
in
show. In many cases, like even for this call, when we were figuring out a time, we had a back and forth. Imagine this assistant could take care of that back and forth and it has access to my calendar and go back and forth. And then maybe your assistant has access to your calendar. That would be much more split second than like us doing it, which takes away from our time. That's just a very small example. Those kind of
Right.
things pervade through the whole engine.
And while you were mentioning, Gorish, that you were doing sales, but you were not initially were not good at it, and that's why you picked PLG, right? So building PLG is also not easy, right? I have seen only few products doing really well in PLG. I know people say PLG and do PLG, right? So can you, and I personally I actually wanted to ping you someday and wanted to learn more about PLG, right? But that I'll do separately. But overall, right? So PLG, building a product-led growth is not easy, right? So what were your initial thoughts? Because most of the companies, what they do is whenever they are launching, they try to book a demo for the product. And so when you first launch your product, was it a book a demo, or you were you had a thought that you want to do PLG from the start, and that's how you opened up your sales gates?
Yeah, our first version of the product was a Google form where people would enter a recording link. And then at the end of the form, they would click submit, and in a few hours, we would give them the summary or the transcript of the call and the dashboard, the full dashboard. So that was 2021. So it was, I don't think it would have been called PLG. It would have also not have been called sales led.
That was Jugaad.
So we would manually go take that call, download it, put it into a Jupyter notebook, run our full analysis on the video, and get those insights, and then create a dashboard out of it. When we started out PLG, I think there were a few things that were very central to us. One was that the product has to be super, super simple to sign up and get started with. For us, the onboarding cycle was less than 30 seconds, if at all. Like typically within 10 seconds, a person would be onboarded and then they would start using the product. The second philosophy we had always in mind was that the value itself should be available in as little time as possible to the customer. Like on their active calls or deals, for our case, the value they should be able to see. They should be able to see how their life can be different if they had Sybill. And that was possible when we did the calendar integration as the core part. Person takes the first call, within the first couple of hours, he's able to see live value on his own deals. And that value should be magical. That was the third idea. We were pretty certain those three fundamentals, we were not sure whether they're sufficient, but the fact that they were necessary was very, very clear to us. And those are true even today as we are building a PLG thing. How it ended up becoming a huge success, what was the other parts of the sufficient condition? I think the magical part changed for us in December of 22, how things really started moving and how we got into PMF or how we got PMF for our offering. But yeah, with PLG, it was the three things that were very critical to us and everything else came on the side.
And majorly, if you are doing PLG, that means you are kind of selling to SMB and mid-market, right?
We have users signing up from public companies with 30, 40, 50,000 employees and paying for their own version as well. But yes, the majority is SMB and mid-market.
Right. And people say that it is a hard market to basically actually dive into, right? Basically, there is a lot of churn, there is a lot of product handholding that you might need to, and there will be a lot of ask coming from left, right, center. So, like, how do you at your end majorly try to deal with that? And I have also seen in your product majorly that there is a upgrade option which goes to the sales team. So there is a SLG or sales led motion that you also have. So how that converts overall?
Yeah, so what we do is we will typically get, and this happens a lot of the times organically, but sometimes we have to push it, where individuals will start inviting their teammates. So as long as it's not just an individual person within the org and it's a bigger team coming to us, that helps a lot. Now, SMB motion always has the issue of a standard monthly churn, which is factors beyond our control. We are typically not too worried about that because the net is still higher because people will invite their teammates and people in the network to the platform. So that helps us contracting more than contracting the effect of like the SMB churn. But we are
Makes
trying
sense.
to move in more mid-market in this turn.
Makes sense. So we'll still switch gears, Gorish, now. Would love to know, as you have recently raised some amount, and raising money is also not easy, right? So if you can give me some glimpse about your first round, starting from first round,
Yeah.
how did you approach investors and how was your thought process while actually pitching to them and then raising another round? All the rounds that you might have raised, right? So yeah, would love to know a little bit insights on that.
Yeah, the first round was a lot on the team, the founder team, and the idea, the like this mind reader for Zoom goals. The first round was actually not super challenging for us. This like even though we were raising for the first time, we had some friends and families. We had people who wanted to support us from our previous idea. We had angels coming over. It still took us time to get started and complete everything, and we were learning everything from scratch. But it was a decent round in a not so decent market, but it happened nonetheless. The second round was a complete slog. It was probably the hardest round I've raised out of all three. It is the hardest round and probably one of the hardest times in my life. The process took over 8 months to finish, more than that, maybe even. And I probably have been rejected by every single or every other investor in the valley. So I spoke to probably 100 investors around that time. And that was a hard one. And we were at a verge where we had like month and a half of cash left. We were trying to figure out, we did have our lead investor from the pre-seed round did tell us to look at acquisition offers. So we did have a couple of higher offers, not really acquisition offers, which are not too bad, but still that excitement of a startup is hard. So I would say we just got very lucky with Powerhouse at that point. Like December of 22, a bunch of different things happened. And specifically vis-a-vis fundraising, I think we had built a relationship with this Powerhouse, with Shri and Kshitij at Powerhouse. So I got a term sheet from them at 4 a.m. on 25th December. I was in Vegas. I wanted a 2-day break from everything that was going on. And I was coming back to my hotel just about to sleep, and I see this email in my calendar. I literally am outside the hotel door. I remember like my room, and I instantly called up Nishit Shumarko and Mahek. I was like, we have a term sheet from Powerhouse out of nowhere. That is how we got funded for our second round. Lots of fun. And then January, the month after, we saw clear signs of PMF within the product as well, which were not present even while we were raising our seed. The Series A was much, much lighter comparatively. We had learned a lot of lessons. We understood what are typically investors looking for. How do we present our story? Our metrics were much stronger. There was a full-blown team that could handle customers. We had customers who are raving about us on a daily basis on public channels. So there was a lot of social proof to go alongside. So Series A, I'd say we had a decent pick of the four, like which we wanted to talk about.
So, just one question there. So Powerhouse was not the pre-seed investor.
They were the seed investor.
They were the seed
Yeah,
investors.
typically
Okay.
they do invest in pre-seed rounds.
Yeah. That's what I think I got confused. Okay. This is actually good. Then, so I think getting a pre-seed investor in your seed proves that there is something that they saw in you, right? And the product. I think that's amazing. Any other story there you want to like share with us?
The other thing that happened, this is probably not the round itself, but we have been building, like in December of 22, we had been building our sales assistant for about 9 months. We were failing horribly at it because while we knew what the customer wanted, we were not able to figure out the tech behind it. So I'll give you one specific example, like a list of next steps that you see in the product today, right? Like after every call. In those days, it was a list of set of sentences from the transcript, which is a very broken sentences. What happened, I think ChatGPT was launched 3rd November. We tried it out internally and we were like, fuck, this is it. And that was probably the thing actually that kept us going. And like we started building, we were like, we can actually import this into our product and we can build this out. We have the vision. Here is the technology to actually enable that vision. So in 11 days, we started building on the product and we had an MVP version out, which we started. So I think we released our product on December 8th in public beta to our existing customers. And they're like, this is crazy good. So from December 8th to December 20th, we got feedback from them and it was very positive. And then throughout the winter holidays, basically the team sat and just built out the product. They're like, we will try this one last thing and see if it works, because we really did not want to get those accept those acqui-hire offers. This is the age of AI and we need to be building our own thing. So that's how we got into this. We January 5th came and we started selling the product. And in the first 25 days in the month of January, we got 100% more sales. Like we went from 50 to 100K. And that first 50K took us 6 months. The next 50K took us 1 month. And it was just upwards from there. Like that specific, and it was all independent of the fundraise, by the way. So that saved both the company and like we saw what product market fit looks like. Like people would talk about PMF as a lot of different things, but we saw customer pull, and that customer pull was where we were like, this is it.
Makes sense. I think, and recently you have basically jumped a lot of your revenue from what it was to, I think, to 15x of sort, right?
Yeah, now
So,
it's much higher for sure. Yeah.
so like, how is the journey of your growth that you have been seeing, and are there any specifics that has led this kind of growth, or is it like a market demand that is happening and the market pull that is happening right now?
Definitely a lot of market pull because of AI technologies. You would have seen that with Revrag. People want to learn about new tools and they want to explore what else is out there to make their lives easier. I think a function of that is, can you solve the problem that they actually have? So that is something we have seen. And that part is harder to figure out just by looking at a website or looking at a LinkedIn page or some post. But if what we figured out is if someone from your network is talking about a solution or an offering, you would tend to trust that individual way more than a general purpose like an online search or a company talking about itself. Especially in the crowded landscape, like one of the big advantages with PLG we have is we have customers across 800 plus companies now. They talk about Sybill and they talk to other people in their network about it as something they have found value and they have found use from. And that has changed our journey and our curve in people find us, discover us, and then also eventually buy us. So,
And I think one good thing there is, so let's say if I'm going on a call, right? I have my Sybill with me as a, so a lot of time it has happened actually, Gorish. So I have been on the call and somebody did know Sybill, or it has the, like they ask me, what is this, right? Why are you using them? Are you testing? Or so there is a conversation that happens, right? I think this is a very good way, and I think PLG is the right way to grow this kind of a product. I think you have picked the right way to grow the product. So like there have been, while you grow the company, right? You have, like, you are seeing tremendous growth now. Keeping culture at the center is also very important, right? And like, so how do you keep that in structure? And was it something that was also told by your investors, right? Like they came back to you, okay, you're growing really, really fast. How are you basically maintaining your, so is it something that happens, or like how do you do it personally in your company?
yeah, for us, it's been hiring the best people, the smartest people on planet Earth. Like, if we can find driven, sincere, and smart people, I think that's the part that has helped keep the culture really, really good within the company. The team is coming without any kind of baggage for the most parts. So it's able to learn, it's able to adapt, it's building from scratch in many cases. But like we have a very high bar at the hiring point, which enables us to build the culture. There have been obviously challenges somewhat, but like as long as you can keep the team of a very high bar, then it keeps on, the impact keeps on compounding with every new person that gets added.
Makes sense. And so company is growing, and at the same pace, I think the technology is also growing, right? This AI is actually at a very high speed. That, so how do you maintain your market shifts? As in, you were saying that ChatGPT came and it helped you get to a point where you saw PMS, right? So how do you maintain the streak, and basically how do you go out and check, okay, is my product making sense? Is this going to make sense in the market, even though there is a lot of things happening?
Yeah, I think continuous experiments, very quick, very fast experiments. The AI landscape is evolving daily. There are new tools that are coming out which can actually be very impactful for, like, if we bring it into our product and solution, it can be very impactful for our customers. So, like, getting that, like, bringing those as part of the tech stack is really critical. And to do that, to figure out the right tools, like, the faster we can experiment, the faster, the better the product becomes eventually. There's also the idea of looking around the corners. Like when we started bringing ChatGPT late 22, early 23, we were the only one probably that was moving at that pace. But come March or April, we saw many people trying to copy what we did. And we're like, while that trend was growing, like everyone was starting to build its own summarizer, even though the quality could be questioned, but we knew that the tech would improve for that summary to change. So we started going from a single call to a deal level summary, because that was where we felt the biggest value add for the customer was. So it took us almost 12 months to build a lot of technology in-house to get the deal level outcomes to be in the right range. But yeah, it is a lot about getting those quick, fast experiments, knowing what is going on out there, and then being able to see how whatever that is can impact you and seeing around those corners.
And how do you think now, basically, as you were saying that, okay, AI is moving in a very tremendous pace, right? On a daily basis, we see new tools coming up, right? Popping up left, right, center. And and a lot of tools are coming in the sales tech space as well, right? So where do you think actually sales tech is already very crowded, right? We both hear this on a regular basis, right? This is like the first thing every VC tells us. So how do you see AI will be actually helping sales tech? What is the next thing that can basically happen in this space? And is it going to be more crowded than ever, or is it going to consolidate now? Because
Yeah.
there are a lot of incumbents as well, big incumbents that are actually building on AI as well. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think there are three kinds of AI applications
Okay.
that takes place, and that is true even for sales tech. So one is your autopilot domain, where you can completely automate the task or functions that a human was doing earlier, and then now an AI can more or less effectively do it. Second is where complete automation is not possible. Then you have copilots. So your AI is an assisting hand to your humans. And finally is AI assisted services. So you don't need in-house humans, but there is something fundamental about the domain or the industry where you can have external people that are getting assisted heavily by AI that can build out those systems or perform those functions for your team. Depending on the specific kind of function, I believe there is a different form of AI tech that takes place. So for SDRs, for example, I do believe the autopilot mode makes a lot more sense, similar to what you are developing with Revrag. For something like an AE function, you cannot remove human to human relationship and trust building from a sales process, because the buying side is a human and they need to look and talk and trust a human to be able to buy a $250,000 or $1 million product. So we'll always have sellers who are humans who are selling to them. But then you can help them around their core job of convincing the other side or selling to assist them humongously. And then you can think of RevOps as one example where an AI assisted services would make a lot more sense. Like given this company, given its sales process, given this vertical, here is the most efficient operations that I can, like RevOps function that I can be set up with the dashboards and reports and charting and metrics. And that's your RevOps functionality where a human is reviewing and they have deep understanding of the industry domains, and they have seen 15 other companies in that. But then on the back end, they are also assisted by AI to actually bring together the full scale dashboard. So to me, it's these three different modes of AI tech that gets built out in the future. And like that's how companies will start operating or looking like in the future, even if they are not today. Right now, everyone is trying to take a function, let's say a sales function, a SDR function, and they are trying to approach it all three ways, right? So you have autopilots, you have companies like Nooks who are anti-autopilot and they are doing more.
Pilot, yeah.
They are doing more. We are building a co-pilot to your SDRs. You obviously have the third side, which is AI assisted services, where your companies are trying to build outbound functions to provide SDR and phone calling services. I think the best model for that is probably the autopilot function, where a company can own the messaging, can own how the outbound works and which people do you want to outbound. And as it becomes easier and easier with AI, then the entire function shifts over here. So there is a proliferation of the kind of companies that are happening. It will continue to proliferate for a while until the tech either improves or there is a clear winner in the space. And then we will start to see more narrowing down of consolidation in other ways for these GTM tech companies.
And when you say this majorly, you're also talking about the incumbents in this space, right?
Incumbents can't
Makes
take a
sense.
different approach. Like Outreach cannot go out and build a fully AI SDR because that will kill their core business. So they are trying to do some bit of that, and it's all like it seems hazy, but then at the end it has to consolidate.
Makes sense. It was a heavy piece. Thank you so much for explaining, Gorish. I think so there are like three things that you told, right? Autopilot, co-pilots, and AI assisted services of sort, right? So great examples actually. Yeah. So moving to the next question, right? So now the pace that at which the AI is actually evolving, right? And we are seeing a lot of nuances that are getting added. So how do you think the pricing of the products will change, right? Because there is a lot of news around which is saying like there will be outcome-based pricing, there will be SaaS is dying, so on and so forth, right? So what are your thoughts on that? So I think as of now, my pricing is majorly kind of SaaS based, right? And I think I have seen your pricing as well. So almost all the products that I have seen has SaaS pricing of sort, right? But do you think like soon there will be a change in pricing also being tested out?
There will be huge innovations in business models and pricing models. We are internally trying to figure out what the pricing model should look like long term, whether it continues to stay SaaS, whether it, as I said, whether it continues to go in or it goes into the outcome based pricing or maybe success based pricing. We are also considering usage based pricing, but seriously, 100% agree with you. Pricing is going to be a much trickier option and a trickier beast to tackle. And here is why, because SaaS, as they're getting more and more productive, they are, in a sense, also killing the target market on which they are becoming more productive. Like if I am charging per user and I am reducing the need of the user, or for example, with AI STR, same thing, right? I'm reducing the need for a user, then to bill someone or price your product on that user is a worse outcome for me as I
Right.
improve my technology. Pricing models will have to evolve. There are many models going around. I think eventually it will depend on the kind of value you can provide and how differentiated the value is. So we will, like internally with Sybill, we will innovate on pricing for sure. But then first and foremost, we are still focused on, can we provide enough value to the customer where we actually have a right to say, okay, we can now charge you either X percentage of revenue or depending on number of deals you take or some different amount on the per user pricing. So it has to go first value and then price.
Makes sense, I think, yeah. So I do believe that there will be a lot of pricing discoveries that will be happening. Even in our segment, it used to be data credits per se. Like you need to buy, let's say, $2,000 worth of credits per month of sort. Now there is AI as well. So if you think, then the pricing will actually inflate, right? It won't make sense for the customers to actually pay. So you need to think of some innovative solution. I'm also like brainstorming these ideas with my team, and I don't know, like what type of pricing will be coming there. But yeah, there will be a lot of things happening. Yep. So I think that was great. I have like one or two more questions for you, Gorish. Majorly, like now you have come a long way from being a professor to now being a startup entrepreneur, right? And building your own startup. and have raised 3 rounds now. Right? So, like, anything that you would have done differently while you were starting up, right? Or overall journey, I think there is this one question looking back. I know hindsight is 20/20, but like, what's that you think you would have done differently?
It's a great question. I think for me, one of the changes it took time to mm, like fully absorb was coming from an abundance mindset. So my background, like my family came from very middle class. I came from a very middle class background. So we were never in this, we were always in a shortage mindset in some ways, like trying to get to where we want to be. I think the last 4 years, one of the biggest lessons I've learned, and especially true for people coming out of developing countries, is when you're trying to build a company, when you're trying to build a startup and you dream for that startup to be really big, the mindset should be one of abundance. Now, what that means, typically that takes a few things. One of the things which is you should worry more about the value that you generate or that something else generates for you than the ROI, right away, the ROI, right? The cost, like I had this thing where uh, if I'm spending $10 and it generates $20 for me, that would be a better outcome for me than if I had $50 and that would be generating $80 for me. You see, like relatively, the 2x ROI was more important than the absolute ROI of 20 additional dollars. Like I'm giving a very dumb example. But
Yeah.
that mindset shifted significantly over these last 4 years. And I wish I had that before, where that would have eased out a lot of decision making that we did. The second thing is, even today, with all the AI tech out there, the user problem, I think, is very critical. That's where the buck starts, and everything else, the technology, the landscape, the competition, the market, everything comes later. First thing to handle and to think about is the user problem. If we can define who that user is and what are their core problems, a lot of decisions I've seen become way, way easier. When we started out, we used to continuously like go between the fact that this is a technology we are building and this technology will become this and that, and the user is here and they will do this, and then the competitions are here and they will do this. If you take one single focus, which is your users, that is the point to start from. Everything else typically falls in place over time. So I think those are two things which I wish I would have known. But yeah, uh, there can be, yeah, that's an interesting question. There can be a lot.
Anything that you would like to tell to inspiring entrepreneurs, right? Or like early stage founders building in this space. I think especially sales tech space.
Sales tech space is tricky. In general, I would say just start. Like typically people take a lot of time trying to take a decision and trying to figure out if they should or should not do it. Like I think just starting out is the most important part. Like once you take that first step, the follow-up steps become easier.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So it was very good. Thank you so much, Gorish. It was an incredible podcast and session overall, right? Knowing about your journey, your insights in AI, overall, these three things I've learned today: Copilot, Autopilot, and AI assisted services, right? So I think, yeah, great, great. Thank you so much. So if our listeners want to get in touch with you, Gorish, what is the way for them to basically get in touch?
First of all, it was awesome. I had a really fun time doing this podcast. If you want to get in touch with me, you can drop me a note on my LinkedIn, or my Gmail is gorish@sybill.ai. So either ways is you can.
Thank you so much, Gorish. For our listeners, if you have enjoyed the episode, do not forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. Stay tuned. We'll have more SaaS stories and lessons from industry leaders like Gorish. Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Yeah. Late night dreams on the revenue ramp. Talking cash flow and sales stamps. Got Revrag